Hello YouTube modelers, welcome back to my channel. I want to thank all my viewers and subscribers for tuning in. If you've been following my revisits, you'll notice that I built a lot of Tamiya vintage tank models in the past. Some of them are motorized, while some of them are just static display or non-motorized. I bought this twin motor gearbox because I want to retrofit one of the non-motorized kits from static to motorized. So things I have to look into is the dimensions or size of this entire unit and the width of the axle. So I'm thinking of putting it into a heavy tank that is very spacious on the inside of the lower hull, so hopefully it'll fit, but I won't know that until I open this and put it together. So it seems very straightforward. A Tamiya motor for a Tamiya model tank, so it should be compatible. This is of course somewhat of a scientific kit for DIYs or for educational purposes of how motors and gears work, but I have seen people on YouTube use them to retrofit tanks, so that's what I'm going to try to do. But before I disclose the tank, hopefully I'll assemble this unit, it'll work, and then I'll look at the dimensions and see if it fits, and then I'll disclose which tank I'm going to be putting it into. So let's open this box together. Okay, so here are the contents of the box. Let me show you the outside carton. It's a very small box. It's written in Japanese, so I don't know what it says, but it has very good diagrams, and I believe you get to select the gear you want, whether 58-1 or 203-1. I will probably be using the low gear because it's a tank, so you can use it to climb over obstacles. But it's a pretty strong motor. I mean, it's a twin motor box as opposed to a single motor. So that's the box. Here are the boxes of gears. Here is the casing. What looks to be gear axles. And also the A, B, and C is all the different positions you can stick the axle in. If you want it down low, up high, near the end. And these are the metal collars instead of ball bearings, screws to hold them in, the axles and the motors and the grease. I just don't know whether these axles are adjustable in width because it has to fit in the hull and reach the drive sprocket wheels on the tank. So I won't know until I build them. Here is the instructions. So I'll start opening the bags and start assembling them. Alright, so the two bags of gears are exactly the same because they're twin motors. So one set of gears for each motor each. The axles, the grease. These are what's going to go inside the drive sprocket wheels. And here are the little sleeve eyelets to handle the axles, kind of like ball bearings, but really just like a sleeve for it to roll easier than just resting on the plastic. Here are the lock screws. For here. And the rest of the parts. So I'm going to start assembling it now. Alright, so the where is it? The twin motor gearbox is complete. The gears are in. I think when I fine tune it, I may have to reopen the box and reposition the axle because I have it in the lower position, but now that I look at it, when I fit it, May have to move it up a notch to the A position, which means I just have to change some gears around. But for the most part, twin motors are in. Now it's twin motors because you can actually make it compatible for remote control and have them operate individually. But for my purpose, I'm going to need them to operate in tandem or both operating at the same time. So I don't really care about the twin motor. I just do care that it'll be powerful enough so it'll have enough torque. But I don't need them to work independently because this is not for radio control or remote control. It's just going to be a motorized. So anyway, everything's done. I have it hooked up in a parallel circuit, I believe. So let's test it out. Close the switch. Both are spinning in the same direction. So it's going to look good. And the tank that I wanted to put it into is the Tiger tank, or the Der Tiger in German. So I built this in the early 80s. On the bottom it says 1970, but this is the vintage Tiger tank. For some reason, I mean, it came in molded in Panzer Gray, and I could have painted it in Panzer Yellow for Africa Corps, but for some reason I wanted that winterized Eastern Front Russian campaign snow whitewash look, so I spray painted with naval gull gray. So this is actually a battleship color, but anyway, so it kind of looks like it's been operating in the winter. So I don't know why I did that, but it is an interesting color because most Panzers are gray with the camo, and when you painted this light gull gray, all the open molded like grill openings and all the detail does kind of stand out. I mean, I could have put some panel line accents to make things stand out, but I just painted it in a lighter color. I used whatever decal I thought was cool looking, which is usually the SS divisions with the death skulls, a picture of a tiger. But this is a very robust, square, simple kit. There is no angles in the armor. But it was a good kit to assemble. I think I bought the basic one, so probably the most cheapest version. But on the bottom it is stamped as 1970. So let's take a look at it more closely. So I'm going to remove this. The inside is very spacious. And before this video I did work by removing the top of the hull because it was glued down, but I'm going to leave it with just polycap because there is 2 polycaps at the end. So the air filter hoses, I had to break it apart, so now they're just friction fitted, but basically I'm just going to pop these off. These are hoses to the air filter. Because I need to pop the bottom to get to it. Okay, so lifts right off. Here are the poly caps. Well, let me flip it over. The grill is molded open, but here are the poly cap right over here. See the right over here? This little stubble that will mount right in here. And then this has like a little hook that catches onto the front. So as you can see, the reason why I like Tamiya for motorizing is because at one time all of these models were probably offered in motorized versions. So you have all the pre-molds for the motorized version, which is the battery. They hold the battery and the motor mounts. And of course, the rubber band tracks, which I love for motorized. I know a lot of you guys who do static display like the multi-link. I've never built a tank with multi-links, but I hear it's, you know, a lot of work because if you put the links together. But I don't think the links would be able to handle the stress or the torque of an electric motor. So these are rubber band tracks, which are great for motorizing. So what I'm going to do is, on the motorized version, there is a metal axle that spans across for the idler wheel in the back. But since this is not motorized, they just gave you plastic pins, which I think are going to be strong enough because this model, the wheels spin very freely. And then they give you kind of like a deletion spindle. So instead of having the metal axle like over here, they just give you a little plastic tab because this is non-motorized for the drive sprocket wheel. So I'm going to remove it just to show you what it's like. So I'll have to derail the track for you. Do this with one hand. Alright, I'm going to have to stop the video. Okay, so I pulled off the track. So, in a previous video, I think I misquoted. The King Tiger 2 has overlapping wheels because it has one row of single wheels and one row of doubles, but these are all doubles, so these are interleaving wheels. As opposed to like the Panther, I think. No, I think it's the King Tiger 2. The inside ones are singles, but see how all of these are doubles? So these are interleaving wheels. These are hard to pull off because in order to remove one, you have to remove like quite a bit of wheels. So I can understand why the Germans had so much problem with these when it came to maintenance. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to work this sprocket wheel off, remove that plastic pin, and then fit this motor in. But I'm either going to use this battery holder, which only holds AA, or I just might use these 3 battery holders to convert it to a 4.5, because these motors can take either 1.5 to 3 volts each, because on the remote control it's usually 2 batteries per motor, but since I'm hooking them up and I just need both of them to turn at the same time, I can use either 3 volts or I can push it all the way up to 6 volts, but minimum is 3 volts to 2 batteries. So I mean 2 batteries, so 3 batteries will work or 4 batteries will work, but 4 is too much. So I can move up to the big C size. But anyway, here is a stamping for 1970, it says. And of course I can try to use the bottom holes for the switches, or I can just slip this through the top. This would be a little easier, but I may want to use these as well. So we'll see how it goes. The rest will just be fitting this in. I can tell you I'm going to have to trim this screw down a little bit before I start drilling holes and try to fit it in. I may even have to shorten the axle a little bit. But more importantly, I'm going to have to get some kind of drive nut to lock the inside of this. So I'll be back. Alright, so these spindles I was able to work and remove these, loosen the glue so they're out. And I snip the ends. Originally this was rounded, but I snipped it so it would clear the sides. Go in like that. I have to screw 2 holes, mount it that way. And the only thing is I need to probably cut the rod to the correct, shorten it a little bit. Put these on. You see how it has the motorized kits, the axles come with a locking nut so that it would be able to handle the torque. So that's why I need a locking nut in here. See if I can crazy glue a nut, because usually it's welded onto the axle, or if you have the ones with the locking screw like these, the kit only gave you enough for the motor. These things. Grub screw and the gear hub. Because you need it to go in there. So I have to shorten that and find a nut. And then I have to mount the motor. Come to think of it, I think this might be the easier route. Is just to leave it with the 2 small batteries can slip in through the hole in the turret. It's going to be a big job because it's already covering 1 of the 3 battery trays. So if anything, I can only use 2, and the C-size batteries are so much heavier too. So that's it. Okay, so I have a little bit of a clearance issue because when I stick this in, the top of the hull is not going to be able to sit flat on this top because this is sticking up. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to shave all this excess plastic off, because it would have been fine if I was able to clear it, because sitting on top of this plastic, it was at the correct position. So it looks like axle will have to be lower in order to clear the gearbox housing so that the top can fit. Because it sits right on top. Alright, so all the connections are made. So the engines run parallel to each other. I guess it's called a series circuit. But I soldered all the electrical points in the motor. Soldering. Then I already drilled out the holes. Everything's been pre-measured for the motor mount and for the battery tray. And one of these idler wheels came off, so I had to re-glue it. Normally I would take the wheels off and grease them up, but it's not a very high speed, and I don't intend on leaving it on for 24 hours a day, so it's okay without the grease. And the squeaky noise actually adds to the realism of a tank. So now I'm just going to mount everything in with the screws. I was able to find a nut approximate size. I had to custom fit it and stick it in as a locking nut to drive the drive sprocket. So I just have to assemble it now. Okay, so everything is installed and everything works so far. I can do this with one hand, hopefully. The only thing is the axle for the drive sprocket is a little lower than I would have liked it. This should actually be a little bit higher, but that's fine in order to make it work. So let me put the top of the hull back on and we'll come right back. Okay, so here is the tank fully assembled. The only thing is the drive sprocket wheel is not as high as it should be because of the motor placement. It actually is maybe 1/4 inch lower than it should be. It should be a little bit higher, and of course I'm not going to get the iconic draping, or what do you call it, the tracks. Since these German tanks don't have return rollers, there's this iconic looking sagging track that usually sags right past the drive sprocket. I think before I had some kind of plastic pin I stick on top, and it kind of gave that illusion that it's sagging. But anyway, because I have to put some tension on it with the motor, that's what it looks like. But anyway, let's turn it on and see how it goes. I have to switch on top. Make sure your hands are not where the tracks are, or else it's gonna close the circuit. Put this back on. Both are moving. So it's pretty cool. So that's it. So overall, it worked out the way I wanted it. I was able to install the twin motor, gearbox, but it's not going to be a simple plug and play. You're going to require some DIY or some shade tree mechanics. So you're gonna have to do some little bit of work to get it to fit. So like I had to cut the axles to make it fit. Had to custom fit those nuts in for the drive wheels, and then I have to have the battery holders and the wiring, and then a soldering gun. So that's pretty much it. So if you do or are interested in motorizing it, just make sure you get the right motor, because this motor is good for heavy tanks that are wide and have a lot of room. I seen someone on YouTube, he put it into the Tamiya M60 tank. If you guys are familiar with the M60, the US medium tank or heavy tank at the time, the motor's in the back, and the back is very squarish, so it fits perfectly. This one, since the drive sprocket is in the front, the engine in the front, it has this little small section first before it goes up. So because I had to fit some of it in here, I had to do some customization, like I had to do some shaving and all that stuff. So next kit I might try is maybe the Jäger Tiger or the Hunting Tiger, which is basically on the Tiger 2 chassis. Or I might buy the single motor engine and try it on a small or medium size tank. But whatever you do, try to get it with the rubber band tracks, because I don't think the multi-link separate track links is going to be able to handle the stress. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to have stills at the end. I hope that this was, if not educational, at least entertaining to see another motorized tank in action, which I always find mesmerizing, and just I can stare at it all day. And that's pretty much it. So I might convert some other vintage Tamiya to motorized tanks by sticking the motor in, or maybe in the future if I do get a kit, I'll just be sure it has a rubber band track and install a motor in it. So thanks for watching.